The New York Giants find another way to lose as the 2025 season falls further into the abyss.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day, and now the number one sports network. My name is Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, Giant fans, I'm numb. All right, I'm recording this podcast for you. It's about 12:30 at night. I'm absolutely numb. The Giants losing in embarrassing fashion to the New England Patriots. Now, originally, I had hoped to talk about some of the changes on defense, some of the, the improvements that were coming along the way. And I'm just going to rant. I mean, because this is just really getting ridiculous at this point. The Giants, just when you think they've reached rock bottom, they top themselves. And this week, it was special teams, which was just absolutely horrible. The Giants spotted the Patriots a 17-0 lead in the first quarter of the game alone. Okay, thanks to special teams miscues, including, later in the game, we saw Younghoe Koo with a kick that wasn't, which I have never, ever seen before in 30 plus years of covering this game. Missed tackles, guys not staying in their lanes. Just an embarrassing effort by the New York Giants, if you want to even call it an effort. And, just the big takeaway, I think, with this Giants team, they've lost their way. I think it's pretty obvious. This team has lost its way. It no longer knows how to win. They talk about being aggressive, and then you see things like on 4th and 1, Mike Kafka decides, we're going to punt instead of go for it, when it was basically 4th and inches. And then later on in the game, they had a 4th and 8, and they decided to go for it then. The lack of urgency later in the game, when towards the end they were running the ball to kill the clock when they were down by over 15 points. So I just think this team has lost its way. It just has. You talk about, we want to be aggressive. We want to be this. We want to be that. No. This team has lost its way. I hate to say it. You have seen the losing kind of settle into the locker room. And you know what the most heartbreaking thing was about this loss, folks? Watching Brian Burns, who has played his heart out all year long. This man has played his heart out through pain, through all kinds of stuff, through frustration. At the end of the first half, Brian Burns sat with his head in his hands on the Giants bench while the rest of his teammates went into the locker room. And Brian Burns had to basically be coaxed by his staffer to go into the locker room because he was that upset. It's almost like Brian Burns is the only one of the few people who cares about what happens, who goes out there with the intention of playing with pride. And it just, it's hard to watch. It just really is hard to watch. I mean, think about it, folks. It just seems like every week the Giants are making history of the wrong kind. This week, great, hat tip to Josh Dubois of the AP. The Giants allowed 30 points in the first half, and that's like the first time they've done that since, I think, going back to 2009. My goodness, can this team be any worse? I just don't understand it. Discipline is lacking, fundamentals are lacking. I mean, were there any good things to come out of this game? Jackson Dart was back, didn't look too bad. The run defense for a while didn't look that bad. but it's just the same stuff week and week and week. I'm at a loss. I just am at a loss. I don't think the Giants have any answers. And you know what? This was supposed to be an audition for Mike Kafka to keep the job. He's not keeping this job, folks. He's just not. You know, they just don't have any answers. And it's embarrassing. I mean, the Giants, they go into their bye week this week, thank goodness. And they're going to come back in a couple weeks and they're going to face 3 out of 4 teams that are in the NFC, and 2 of which are going to be division opponents. What makes anybody think that they're going to win another game this year? I don't think they will. And they've got the Raiders on their schedule, a team that they should easily beat. I don't think they should. They're going to. I really don't. And it's just so frustrating, guys. I mean, I'm running out of things to say about how bad this team is. And, this was a good opportunity for the Giants to go in, to make a statement, to get a statement win. There were favorable advantages, favorable matchups for this team, and they couldn't cash in. And it's just so sad because, like I said, there are guys like Brian Burns, Jackson Dart, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, Theo Johnson. You see certain guys who care. And then you see others who are just like, another game. And we'll talk about one actually in a little bit. But the Giants, they're lost. Plain and simple, folks. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to sit here and try and spin this into a positive by going back into the game book and saying, oh, this worked out well, and this worked out well. It was a total team loss. And, it's just, they find new ways to lose every single stinking week. And I'm tired of it, and if I'm tired of it, I got to imagine you guys and gals are tired of it. So, bye week is coming up. Joe Schoen is supposed to talk. I'll mention more about that in a little bit. But the Giants, 33-15, embarrassing. Just absolutely embarrassing. And there's no other way to put it. Now, coming up next, we're going to talk about one of the players who I question if he gives what about this game. All right, that's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as soon as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. You can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets live all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Coming up this week, Joe Schoen is scheduled to speak to the media. I believe he's going to speak on Tuesday. Haven't gotten confirmation of that just yet as I record this, but I believe it's going to be Tuesday. And of course, Joe's going to get grilled, and we're going to talk about Joe on this particular show coming up in the next segment. But first, I've got to talk about Abdul Carter. Now, for the second time in the last 3 weeks, Abdul Carter committed some kind of infraction to team rules that earned him a benching. This time around, ladies and gentlemen, the benching was for the entire first quarter, while, again, the Patriots were racking up 17 points. Now, I'm not saying that Abdul Carter alone would have made a difference in those 17 points, but the bigger picture here is this kid, and I mean this kid, has better grow up. Okay. This is just not acceptable. Now, after the game, when he was asked by reporters, what happened, he basically said, stuff happens, except he didn't use the word stuff. Oh, nice attitude, kid. You're getting paid big bucks, and oh, stuff happens. Wonderful. Says a lot about your maturity, doesn't it? Can't have that. All right. Abdul Carter is a very talented young man. He's going to be a great football player when he decides to grow up and realize this is a game that I get paid to play. All right. This is an opportunity that not everybody gets. And this immaturity with not showing up when doing what you're supposed to and being where you're supposed to be on time and letting your teammates down. You think back in the day that the Harry Carsons and the George Martins of the 1980s, you think those guys would have allowed this to go on? These other guys, these other teammates are out there, again, Brian Burns is out there busting his hump, and Abdul Carter, for whatever the reason, can't keep his schedule straight where he's, potentially missing games or practices or whatever. There's no excuse for that. And it's very disappointing. Very disappointing. Abdul Carter, look, I'm a firm believer that you're all adults. They're all adults in that locker room. They should all be responsible for what they do. I'm not sure why Abdul Carter, especially after 2 weeks ago, saying that, I own up to it, I take accountability, I learned, it won't happen again. And now something happened again that warranted a benching, this time for an entire quarter. I don't understand what's going on with this kid, but he better grow up because this is just not acceptable. It's just not. Right? He said, "Oh, I let my team down. Oh, the message got through." All right, don't tell me that the message got through. Show me. Now I don't pretend to know Abdul Carter very well. I've spoken to him a few times. He's always been, cordial to me and whatnot. But don't walk around, and this is the impression that I'm getting just by, what's going on with him. You're not the big man on campus anymore, rookie. Whatever you got away with at Penn State isn't going to fly here. Whatever you might have gotten away with earlier before the coaching change isn't going to fly going forward. I'd like to think that Abdul Carter is an intelligent young man, and I know he is. But this lack of responsibility, it's very, very disheartening. And, if I were his teammates, again, I'd be furious with him. They shouldn't have to be his keeper. They shouldn't have to be, come on, it's time for practice, or it's time for a meeting, or it's time for whatever. Carter's got to grow up, plain and simple. And, Kafka, he's doing what he can to drive the message home. But the fact that this has happened twice now in 3 weeks, that's disturbing. Carter also told reporters after the game that, maybe my rookie season hasn't, the transition from the college to the pros hasn't gone as smoothly as I thought it would. Duh, you think? Maybe do something about it? I get it. Look, you're in a new city, you're in a new job, but this is December now. You have been with this team since what, April? All right, this is over 6 months you're with this team. You're still adjusting? Now some people might say, oh, well, the college season, it's a little shorter than the NFL season. All right, to that I say, well, don't they play bowl games? Wasn't Abdul Carter in bowl games that extended his college season? So don't give me that as an excuse. Abdul Carter has been a disappointment. For the 3rd overall pick, a guy who is brimming with talent, who I think, once he matures is going to be one heck of a football player, he's been a disappointment. And this is a guy, remember, we were talking about, this is a potential defensive rookie of the year candidate. No. So, Carter said again, the message got through. I let my team down. It won't happen again. If it does happen again, when they come out in 2 weeks, they should bench him for the rest of the season. And not only just bench him, but fine him heavily within the parameters, that they're allowed to fine him. Because that's how he's going to get the message. All right. And it's all part of, I hate to say, it's all part of this culture that has just turned so sour. Where, again, you see certain guys just give up or mail it in. And it's terrible. So, here's where we're at. Here's where we're at, folks. And it's unfortunate because I will still say, and you guys can disagree with me if you want, there's talent on this team. And it's just, the culture has just gotten so bad that I don't know that it can be fixed right now, short of a massive house cleaning, which, by the way, brings me to the next segment we're going to talk about, and that is the general manager, Joe Schoen. Don't go anywhere. I'll have that for you in a moment. Hey, Giant fans, the holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every single time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when your recipient plugs it in, the memories are already there. There are no apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. This gift is perfect for anyone who loves photos. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame so that the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open. The packaging comes gift ready. There's no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer. And now for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter. Use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's Aura Frames, AURA frames.com. The promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Giants lose to the New England Patriots 33-15. And unfortunately, rather than talk about the game, which was just, awful, we're talking about the bigger picture issues here, which are coming to a head. And now, folks, we've got to talk about Joe Schoen. If you had asked me even a couple weeks ago about Joe Schoen, I'd say, you can make a case for him to stay. I don't think that anymore, folks. I really don't. How can management, how can ownership justify keeping him? You changed the head coach. You changed the defensive coordinator. You got your franchise quarterback back. You still have a lousy culture sitting in the locker room. So how can you take the coaching staff and throw them out and justify keeping the general manager who put all this together? All right, so let's look at some info, shall we? Over the last 2 years, the Giants are 5-25, the worst record since 2017 in the NFL. They're 0-8 on the road this year, have 13 straight losses on the road. All right, Joe Schoen is 3-22, which is a .120 win percentage in the last 25 games. The Giants are 5-17-1 against NFC East opponents, which is where it all begins. And they are 20-43-1 over their last 4 seasons. Is that progress? It is not. Does that justify keeping the general manager? It does not, in my opinion, at any rate. Now people will say, well, he brought in Malik Neighbors and he brought in Jackson Dart and he brought in, I'll take your pick, Cam Scattaboo. Big deal. Okay. Malik Neighbors at the time, everybody kind of figured that was a no-brainer pick. Jackson Dart, he was sitting there. Okay, Shane, engineered and got him. Great. But right now, the program is just a mess. It's an absolute mess. Deonte Banks hasn't panned out. Evan Neal hasn't panned out. Tyler Nubin hasn't turned into, the guy that I think they were hoping for. You can look at some of the free agents that they've acquired. Jermaine Illuminor has been great, but other than that, not a whole lot. The kicker situation has been a mess. The Brian Burns trade was great. The salary cap right now is looking like a mess for next year. They're going to have to do a lot of, cutting to get under the cap and give themselves more room. They don't have a lot of, draft assets right now. That'll probably change in April. The bottom line, folks, and I like Joe. Great guy. He's always willing to help, if I have a question or whatnot. But he hasn't done a good job. And I know ownership has already gone on record as saying that he will lead the next head coaching search. I don't think that should be. I really don't. How do you justify keeping Joe Schoen after what we have seen all season long? How do you justify it? You could blame the coaching to a degree, but now the coaching's been changed out. How do you justify keeping Joe Schoen? Moreover, if they keep Joe Schoen, now you're going back to what you did after Tom Coughlin, where you put the head coach and the GM on different timelines. And I'm sorry, folks, that often does not work out. It doesn't. There are exceptions. It's working out in Chicago because they got the right head coach. It's working up in New England, obviously. But for a team that's just gone backwards year after year since that first, that 2022 season, how do you justify running it back with the same GM? I don't know that you can. Now, if you're ownership, again, maybe you say, okay, injuries, Malik Neighbors got hurt, Cam Scattaboo got hurt. You can't keep making excuses, though. So, do you blow everything up and start from scratch, which is basically what it would entail if you bring in a new GM? Do you say, okay, you know what, Joe's not working out with you, so maybe, the Giants, in an effort to kind of be halfway towards some stability, they turn to Brandon Brown as the GM? I don't know. But I do know this. The Giants aren't getting better. And, Joe's made mistakes, and I think he'll be the first to admit to that. And again, he's scheduled to talk this week. Tuesday, I believe, is the day he's going to speak. But the Giants haven't really recovered from the mistakes that he made. And the biggest mistake, obviously, was after that 2022 season when he thought the roster was a little bit better than it actually was. And, it's been a running theme with this Giants team that they're not good enough to overcome their mistakes. And that applies on the field and off the field. So here we are. The Giants now 2-11. Who knows if they'll win another game this year? If they don't, it'll be a worse record than the year before. Can Joe Schoen survive it? Should he survive it? Well, his plan, I think, going to ownership last year was, hey, we'll fix the quarterback situation and we'll be cooking with gas. Hasn't happened. The investments made in the defense, it's not a top 10 defense. So that's a problem. Injuries, okay, look, you can't plan for injuries. I get that. But you can plan for depth. And it's just, it just hasn't been good. It just hasn't been good. And folks, I don't, again, I don't like saying that a guy should be fired. I don't care who it is. But how do you justify rolling back, given the numbers, given the results? It's not just that this is an off year. It's been a bad span of 3 years, multiple years. So we'll see what the Giants do. I think at the end of the day, because ownership came out and said Joe's going to lead the head coaching search, he probably stays. And if he does, he's got to be a heck of a lot better, because this team is going backwards. And they've got to figure out a way to put it together. And, will a good head coach fix a lot of problems? He might. But they got to get the right guy in here. And, do you have confidence that Shane will give a recommendation for the right guy when you have a GM who basically leans on his past? I mean, you look at all the former Buffalo players that he's brought in over the years, the coaching that has come down from Buffalo. It's like a small community that just keeps following from place to place for the most part. And that's not a way, in my opinion, to build a franchise up. So we'll see. I'm curious to see what Joe has to say. Again, he's scheduled to speak on Tuesday. As I record this, it's now about 10 to 1 in the morning on Tuesday morning. So we'll see what happens. All right, Giant fans, I want to thank you, as always, for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And I especially want to thank you for allowing me to vent. It's been a very, very frustrating Giants season, and this game was just really, really hard to swallow. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Double Dose. You get Tyler the Madman Rowland, who gives you a shot of espresso to start your day. And then at the end of the day, what better way to wrap up with Tony Wiggins, who takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdown. Find Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, that does it for me tonight. And again, I will be back with a new episode after the Joe Schoen presser. We'll have takeaways, and then we'll just continue as we go into the bye week. And we've got plenty of content coming up for you. So hope you will tune in. Have a great one, everybody.